of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby! Well, welcome to this incredibly special edition of Defending the Kingdom. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs. Don't fear, Matt McMullen, senior team reporter, will join me in a bit, but we have an awesome guest here with us. Is the president and CEO of the Greater Kansas City Sports Commission and Foundation and Visit KC. If she doesn't have enough jobs, Kathy Nelson. I said at a Monday luncheon that there are people that have superpowers and then there are superheroes. You're a superheroine here. I expect you to fly over the city. You have been, I just want to ask you, because in a span of less than 75 days on this site, you had a parade, a Super Bowl celebration, and now this.
Yeah.
Walk us through the challenges, the victories of that.
Oh, there certainly have been challenges. You know, anything of this scale will be a challenge. And when your city has never hosted something of this scale, there's a challenge. And really that just comes down to communication. So over-communicating, lessons learned. But boy, the successes so outweigh those challenges. I mean, you look at the beautiful weather, of course, and then welcoming hundreds of thousands of people. That's a pretty big success and victory already, and we haven't even opened the gates.
What has been the path to get here? Going back to, I remember when you were discussing, hey, we're going for this. We're going to try to get it. I think it was 2018 you made the announcement. The path to get to this point and what it took from everybody cooperating.
Yeah, we started back in 2015, you know, traveling to Chicago, have traveled to every draft in person, formed multiple relationships at every level of the league you can imagine, and then multiple pitches, multiple presentations, hundreds of phone calls, a lot of negotiating to get to this week. And every step of that journey has been a blessing. Every step of that journey has been fascinating and rewarding and a little frustrating at times. But, you know, you get people from all across North America working with you on what this looks like and how do you capture what everyone wants to do. And yet this comes down to, this is the NFL's event, and this is our time to help our city shine hosting that event.
How big is this and can it be? Because I'm sitting here, the World War I Museum is just in front of us here, in the fact that now the nation will go, oh my gosh, the national, I mean, how much can this perpetuate the future of the next generation?
You know, we talk a lot about how many people will be here and visit in person. What's more impressive is how many people will watch on television. Tens of millions of people will watch and see the story of Kansas City and hear our hearts, which I think is so special. And then all of the social media. They're already talking about all of the records we're breaking with how many people have downloaded the One Pass app, how many teammates have signed up to volunteer. And then on top of that today, they're like the social media posts. We're like trending so far ahead. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's great. But I think that can't be understated, the importance of that for our city. Will change the legacy of our city, and I believe that.
Again, Kathy Nelson with us, the president and CEO of the Greater Kansas City Sports Commission Foundation and also Visit KC. Now let's go through a bit of a primer here, because we've been asked questions, Matt and I both, and throughout the kingdom, because there's going to be people here. I said this is like the state fair or a World's Fair, NFL style. Walk us through a primer of how this is going to work if I'm a family wanting to enjoy this.
Yeah, the best advice I can give is download that NFL One Pass. That has so much information on it. It will show you the footprint of the NFL fan experience, which is free for everyone to attend. You will go through the security, the clear bag policy, just like you're going to a Chiefs game. Same policy. Do not bring a backpack. You know, don't bring a big diaper bag. Bring a clear bag, and you can find all those rules and regulations on that app. And then from there, once you're on to the secure site, there's food and beverage, which is so fascinating and great. The first time ever, they're using all local restaurants. Normally, they bring in a national vendor to provide food. 20 local restaurants are feeding everyone. And from there, they keep the profits. So we're truly giving back to the community in many ways. But once you're there, the South Lawn you'll experience with a fan experience, kind of like an amusement park for NFL fans, all 32 clubs. And then this North Lawn becomes the amphitheater for the draft stage itself, which happens every night, Thursday, Friday, and then all day on Saturday. And we have so many fun surprises. I'm like giddy about everything, every minute of every day.
Incredible. We know that Thursday night's huge in the second and third round on Friday, but I've been also talking to people about Saturday. Now, we know in the Chiefs Kingdom how good the 4th through 7 rounds can be. We won a Super Bowl because of it.
Right.
But I've been pushing Saturday a little bit for the people that come from the Des Moines and Wichita and Topeka and maybe western Kansas or western Missouri. What do you tell families then, and what about Saturday and how exciting that could be?
You know, we are really pushing Saturday. I love the tagline this year. It's new for the NFL, called Greatness on the Clock. And that doesn't mean that the clock stops Thursday night, and it doesn't stop Friday. All day Saturday, there's greatness on that clock. And all of those picks, as you just said, our Chiefs Kingdom knows the importance of those 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. And then on top of that, we have so many fun activations. We're doing a barbecue competition on Saturday. You'll have autograph stations. There'll still be so many things to do. Maybe a little lighter crowd, which is a great time for you to bring your family.
And what time do things open on Saturday?
We open at 9 a.m. on Saturday, and the draft starts at 11 a.m. And then each of the 3 days ends with a concert. So a great reason to come down and have some fun in Kansas City.
We have people that engage this podcast from around the world. We're going to check in with some in a second with Matt. But you need to know there's Mahomes, there's Kelsey, there's Andy Reid, and then there's Kathy Nelson. This woman is a remarkable gal in the capital city of the Chiefs Kingdom and the home of the 2023 NFL Draft. So, Kathy, thank you so very much.
You.
And we're going to turn the headsets over here to Matt and transition here. So thank you so very much, Kathy.
Thank you, Mitch.
She is, the work that people have done on this event is staggering. And like I said yesterday, we had a Legends of the NFL luncheon with Kathy and her staff. It's not like this is the only thing they've had to work on. I mean, they've hosted NCAA regional tournaments. We're getting ready to host the World Cup. There have been other events that have it's almost like they're working double shift at a 24-hour plant. I mean, she's amazing. And her and her staff have done a fabulous job in working with the league in what we're looking at here, which is going to be, I think, Matt, the best production the NFL has ever had, at least relating to the National Football League draft.
Yeah, it's just so incredible and brings me so much pride as a lifelong Kansas Cityan to see that this is our draft, this is our event, and we're putting on what we both think is going to be the best NFL draft ever. And one thing I've been talking about with some of my office mates, some of our other producers here at the Chiefs, is just how amazing this run for Kansas City has been over the last 10 years or so, even dating back to the Royals Championship Parade back in 2015, 2 championship parades for the Chiefs, all these great events that we've hosted in our city, and now the NFL Draft, the largest event we're ever going to host in Kansas City up to this point, and we really get to show off how great our city is.
5 AFC championship games we've hosted in a row. That's an NFL record, and the World Cup is headed here in 2026. So it's not going to stop here in the capital city of the Chiefs Kingdom. And we love it that the fact that now worldwide people are experiencing through this podcast and other ways just how amazing this place is. It's not only the home of the football team that you love to follow, it is the home of many wonderful things of people who live, work, and play here. This is really a great stop in the world, and people are now they're experiencing that and figuring that out.
And what, they're projecting like 300,000 people to be here from around the world to come check out Kansas City, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to fall in love with this city after they're here.
Yep. All right, now let's jump into the draft itself. And before we do that, let's go around the world.
Let's go around the world, and before we do that, we have a sponsor now.
We do, thank you.
We are presented to you by Ticketmaster.
All right.
Yeah.
Just use them today, in fact, so love it.
Exactly. So we are brought to you by Ticketmaster and will be for the foreseeable future. Let's go around the world. I just have one today. Just one around the world today. It's a good one, though. It is Grant. He sent me a photo from the DMZ in South Korea in the joint security area looking toward the North Korean side. He's wearing his Chiefs hat. And, he's representing out there in the DMZ. He claimed it as Chiefs Kingdom Freedom's Frontier. Pretty cool.
And that spot on the earth is a very unique spot. I've had many friends there. I've talked about the Irish Brigade. He's been there. Obviously, he's just recently retired. But that puts things in perspective when you're standing right at the DMZ. And you're looking literally just yards away from something very different than what we experience here. And so, man, prayers out to everybody who serves, but especially at the DMZ.
Absolutely. And obviously, a lot of lives were lost in the Korean War and in that conflict in general. That conflict still technically is going on. Yeah. I believe there was never a truce signed, but to have a Chiefs hat there and introduces a bit of a sense of home for the people there that are from Kansas City, and seeing a Chiefs hat is pretty cool. So Chiefs Kingdom representing at the DMZ between North and South Korea. That's a new one.
We hope you enjoy this edition of Defending the Kingdom. We'll call it It's Here, It's Now, and It's Real. That's what we're calling this episode, because the NFL Draft is here, and it's just an awesome feeling. And a lot of you who listen to this podcast who are not from the States and around the world, hopefully will get a chance to visit. Matt and I keep encouraging you to do that, to come to GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. It's an iconic venue, but this is a city you can enjoy. Actually, it's a region you can enjoy. There'll be people here from the Kingdom close to the epicenter, about a 200-mile radius. And within that radius are so many amazing things to experience if you come here and visit in the Chiefs Kingdom. Let's jump into this 2023 draft. You and I have been looking at it, doing the scuba dive, I call it. I think there's as any draft, there's a lot of facets to it. But what's your overall impression of the 2023 draft that will happen here just hours away on that stage?
Well, my first impression is how fortunate are we that we get to watch all this madness take place from the 31st overall pick as the Super Bowl champions. Every team can get better, the Chiefs included. No roster is ever perfect, but the Chiefs just won the whole thing. They're picking last in their home city. And we don't have to worry about fighting over a quarterback, or will one of these quarterbacks slide to us, and is this guy going to be our guy for the next 10 years? No, we have that guy in Patrick Mahomes. We have the best quarterback in all of football, already one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and he's just 27 years old. So we don't have to worry about a lot of things other teams worry about going into draft weekend, but it will be fun to see how the top 10 kind of plays out, because you have a bunch of teams that do need a quarterback. Teams like the Carolina Panthers at number 1 overall. The Houston Texans, are they going to take a quarterback at number 2 overall? Do they trade out of that spot? The Arizona Cardinals, do they trade out or take maybe one of the best defensive players available on the board? The Colts need a quarterback. The Seahawks could take a quarterback. The Lions, they could. I don't know. This goes on and on. We really don't know how the top 10 is going to play out, and typically we always kind of know who the first overall pick is going to be, right? We all have a good idea. That's not the case this year. It probably will be Bryce Young, but we don't know that for sure. It could be C.J. Stroud or maybe somebody else. So that's the fun and the drama for us. We get to watch it all just play out from afar.
It seems like over the last couple of weeks, the compass has kind of pulled for Carolina's decision, and they traded up. The Bears traded out of that slot to give it to the Panthers, and we were anticipating taking a quarterback. But it's suddenly moved to, like, from C.J. Stroud to Bryce Young over the past 2.5 weeks. It seems like the concerns about Bryce Young's size is somewhat diminished here. To me, so I don't know if there's as much drama in that first pick as there will be in the second pick, and that's where this draft starts to take on a life of its own. Meaning we both, I think, look for the Texans to trade out of that second pick. All these teams that are looking for a quarterback, because Houston, there's some feeling that the Texans will still get a quarterback by trading down one spot, and this is where it gets close to the Kingdom now. We're going to watch this, as you said. We watch this stage kind of flurry for hours before the Chiefs pick at number 31. But this could involve the division rival, because there's a lot of discussion about the Raiders, who set at 7, possibly trading up with the Texans at 2, maybe flip-flopping ones, and the Texans could still get a quarterback, maybe a Will Levis, Anthony Richardson at the 7 slot, or at the least get a premier defender in this draft. So it could get close to home if it is the Raiders, and keep in mind there's a lot of old Patriot understanding there, because there's some alums of the Patriots that work both at the Raiders and at the Texans.
And sure, the Raiders just signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't think that rules them out of taking a quarterback in this draft to be their quarterback of the future. I don't know if one of those top 4 guys will be there at 7 overall. Maybe they will be, depending on how the board falls. But if the Raiders want to get one of those top 4 quarterbacks, or if they have one of those guys circled that they really want, they might have to trade up to number 2 overall with the Texans, or number 3 overall with the Cardinals. It's going to be interesting because, again, teams like the Raiders, they're trying to get their guy for the next 15 years, for the next decade. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback, but he's on the older end now. Do the Raiders want to try to get their guy here in this draft? If they do, they probably have to trade up.
And teams since 2017, let's be honest, and we're not saying this from an arrogant standpoint, teams have tried to emulate what the Chiefs did with basically Patrick Mahomes having an apprentice year. You could see the Raiders doing that. Let's say that under the thesis here that they would go from 7 with the hypothesis of going 7 to 2 and getting the quarterback of the future, as you stated. but then they have Garoppolo to possibly groom that next quarterback. So that might be in the Raiders' plans here. And if so, again, that affects the division. But then there's the Colts. What do they do sitting there? There's some thought that they would move up and try to grab a quarterback. The Arizona Cardinals have Kyler Murray. But we haven't talked about these premier defenders that are sitting there. A guy like Will Anderson, Jr. of the Alabama Crimson Tide, or even Jalen Carter. Now, he's going to be taken, right? We know that there was the off-field episode and situation with Georgia. But now everybody is saying he's going to be in one of the top 6 picks.
Yeah, Jalen Carter is a really good player. I was speaking with Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network and NFL.com a few days ago about defensive tackles for the Chiefs to watch in this class. And there is some depth there at the defensive tackle for the Chiefs, maybe at the back end of the first round or in the second round. But the one guy who we all know will be off the board is Jalen Carter because he's going in the top 10. A lot of drama for him this offseason, but he's one of the best players in the country. He will be taken in the top 10, probably the top 5. Curious to see where he goes because the Raiders could go in that direction. They could take Jalen Carter, and then we'll be seeing a lot of him over the next several years.
So now this leads it because this 2-slot trade feels like it's going to happen. Then who's trading up to the 2, and then what happens to the 3, and it becomes this Rubik's Cube or chessboard. The next thing I see happening is where the run is going to be. And again, you stated it so perfectly. We're standing here looking at the stage where all this is going to happen on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday here in Kansas City, home of the 2023 draft. But I think the run, just my theory, will come at cornerback. There are outstanding corners in this league. Is there a Patrick Surtain Jr. in this draft, the great corner of the Broncos? Maybe. When you look at Devin Witherspoon of Illinois or Christian Gonzalez of Oregon, Joey Porter Jr. of Penn State, we could go on, the kid out of Maryland. You're looking at 4 maybe starting corners, like plug-and-play corners right away, where teams that don't need the quarterback either trade up or make a rush on those guys. How does that affect the Chiefs? Well, if they don't take those corners and they're sitting there at 31, the Chiefs might take them. However, if that run starts, what does it push down? Wide receivers, offensive tackles, edge rushers, which Brett Veach has stated publicly. I mean, that's not rocket science. That would be at the top of the priority list for the Chiefs.
I think what you said about corner is really interesting because there's kind of a groupthink out there at this point in the pre-draft process where we all agree who the first-round corners are, right? It's the guys that you mentioned, guys like Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Joey Porter Jr., and Deontay Banks from Maryland. But beyond that, who is going to be the guy that no one thought would be a first-rounder that all of a sudden is taken at 21st overall or so? A guy like Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State, I think, could sneak in to the first round. Keely Ringo from Georgia could sneak into the first round. There's going to be a player or two that we all seem to think are, they're early day 2 guys who end up being taken in the top 25 or so. And like you said, that's good news for the Chiefs ultimately, because if you're identifying 3 main position groups for the Chiefs, and we don't know what direction they'll go, they're in a position where they can truly take the best player available. But the general consensus is they could go offensive tackle, they could go edge, they could go wide receiver. And if other players are being taken in this draft that are not those positions, it's not rocket science, like you mentioned, that pushes everyone down for the Chiefs. So that's why I'm always in favor of these quarterbacks rising, these positions the Chiefs don't really need, rising in this draft, because it only means that we'll have our choice of the best players available when we pick at 31 or maybe when we trade up.
And don't be stunned, Chiefs Kingdom, that if one of those guys is there at 31 that the Chiefs wouldn't take him, because Spags will figure that out. And corners are a little bit like pitching in baseball. You can't get enough. And we have seen, like with L'Jarius Sneed, we pigeonhole a guy in a corner. We know, go back to 3 episodes ago, the Kingdom Lens, where the Chiefs were so resourceful in taking LJ Sneed because he became a slot blitzer, which is in essence an edge rusher many times in your nickel set. He's such a great blitzer out of the slot, the best in the league. If you haven't watched Forbes, do it. 6 pick sixes.
It's a record.
6 pick sixes at Hale State, Mississippi State for Emmanuel Forbes. A little thin. He's only about 166
Rail
pounds.
thin.
But he will find the football, and when he does, zoom, he's gone. Watch his play against Will Levis of the Kentucky Wildcats. Levis didn't even see him. He's like, what happened to the ball? It's going the other way. All right, the 31st pick, well, let's talk a little bit about maybe then it shoves down tackle or edge rushers. This draft, to me, and you and I have talked about this, talk about primo picks in the first round. The 15, maybe 18, 19. Some of the pundits would say 20, but from 20 to even maybe to 50, the guy that you get at 21 will not be that much different than the guy you would get at 45. And I think that's something the fans maybe have to realize.
That's amazing news for the Chiefs, right? We're picking at 31 overall. The way the draft is designed is it's supposed to introduce parity, where the people at the top of the draft, the worst teams, are getting better, and the teams at the bottom of the draft are not getting the best players. But just the way this draft has worked out is truly the depth and the strength of this class is guys in that 20 to maybe 50 range. And the Chiefs are right in the middle of that at 31 overall. It's a great opportunity for the Chiefs. And unlike previous years where maybe there's a certain position the Chiefs really have to address, like 2020 comes to mind. After that season, you lose in the Super Bowl, you have to address offensive tackle, right? We're really not talking about any other positions in the first round because they have to address offensive tackle. They ended up trading for Orlando Brown Jr. With that first-round pick. This draft, that's really not the case. Are there areas the Chiefs can get better? Sure. Those three areas I mentioned are the ones that come to mind, but they could go any of those directions and end up with a pretty good player that we feel really good about that could come in on day one and help this team hopefully get back to the Super Bowl. They don't have to go any of those directions. One of those players in those position groups will be there, and I'm really excited about the crop of guys that could be available because there's some good players in this draft that maybe wouldn't be available in this range in previous years.
Other position before we close here, and we got one other thing about the blessing and the curse of the 31st pick, is the tight end position. Now, let's say there's run on corners happen. Just take that hypothesis, and it shoves down tackles. It shoves down edge. It shoves down what you've got, but also shoves down tight ends in the fact that this is a really good tight end class. I mean, people talk about Mayer of Notre Dame. Kincaid is super athletic. He's got to stay healthy, and so does the Oregon State tight end. But there are 4 or 5 impact tight ends that are considered to be somewhere in the mid-first to the mid-second. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, we don't need a tight end. We've got a glut of tight ends. If the right tight end is there, go back to the kingdom lens here, in that if it's there, don't look past that the Chiefs would take one and figure out a way to use him, especially if it's an athletic tight end that is in this class. Again, don't be stunned if the Chiefs, if it's there, would do something like that.
It gets back to what we've been saying for weeks now, that the Chiefs truly can take the best player available. They don't have a glaring need where they have to fill a hole. Again, areas that can get better, yes. But if a really good tight end is there at 31, a guy like Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid, those two come to mind for sure, they can do it, and they're the team that has the ability to do so because they're already so good, and they just won the Super Bowl, right? And we talk about wide receiver, and yeah, we have to find some more pass catchers on this team. Well, a guy like Dalton Kincaid, sure, he's a tight end, but he is a quasi-receiver playing tight end, just like Travis Kelce is. Travis Kelce is the #1 wide receiver on the Chiefs right now, even though it says tight end next to his name. Dalton Kincaid has that kind of potential. So Kincaid would make a lot of sense. Michael Mayer is more of a complete kind of tight end. He's a bigger guy, more of a blocker as well as a pass catcher, but he would be exciting in that spot. But they don't have to do it in round 1. This is one of the deepest tight end classes I can ever remember. There's some guys who are really good players who will be available on day 2. Guys like Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State.
That's my guy. You know it is.
Yeah, you love that guy.
Love that guy.
For good reason. You mentioned Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. Darnell
He's gotta
Washington.
be healthy. He missed most of last year, but yeah, Musgrave's, he's got a shot.
Good player. And then Darnell Washington from Georgia,
huge.
Who's 6'8", 250 pounds. Didn't play a lot of the move tight end role in college, was mostly a blocker, but was used a little bit in the passing game and was effective because he's huge as a pass catcher. So it could make a lot of sense for the Chiefs as well. But if a tight end is there in round 1, they could do it. And if they don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they did on day 2.
And keep in mind, we're looking for a fullback replacement, right? Michael Burton has moved on to the Broncos. That tight end-ish person of this group of tight ends, and that's a very diverse group, could shift into, or your 4th tight end is also your fullback. All right, just keep that in mind. Go back and watch the Kingdom Lens, talking about versatility and being creative. We'll close it out this way, and I call it the blessing and curse of the 31st pick. First of all, the blessing is, and you brought it up, we're standing on the lawn where there were hundreds of thousands of people, and I got to stand right there on that stage with our football team with the Lombardi Trophy, 3 of them. So that's a good thing that you're picking 31. The curse is, particularly with how the Chiefs' picks work this year, there's not a ton of it would be very difficult, I think, for the Chiefs to move up much. You know, last year they could move up to 20 to get the 21 slot, I believe, to get Trent McDuffie. But to do that, there was equity to do it. This year, maybe not as much equity. Now, you can move up. And, you know, we know about Brett Veach. He will not hesitate. If he sees it, he strikes. But maybe, you know, in the mid-20s he could do that, but maybe not. And so 31, one of the curses is it kind of feels sometimes like the start of the second round.
Yeah, it's difficult because 31 overall basically is the first pick of the second round. 30 teams have selected before you have, and it's difficult to trade up from that pick very far. Brett Veach mentioned in his presser last week that mid-20s range is pretty much the striking distance. If the Chiefs see a guy falling a la Trent McDuffie last season, you go up and get him. You get your guy. But I really think there's so much depth in this class that the Chiefs don't have to do that. If they shouldn't feel like they have to, right? Because they'll get a good player at 31. If they identify a guy who is sliding, they can find a way to make it work, I think, with their draft capital. But you're right, it will be difficult. Let's quickly run through the picks the Chiefs have in this draft. They have 10 of them. 31 overall, obviously. Then in the second round, number 63 overall. In the third round, number 95 overall. They have 2 4th-rounders, one of them in the Tyreek Hill trade. Number 122 overall, number 134 overall, a 5th-rounder, which is number 166 overall, 2 6th-rounders, one from Miami, one as a comp pick. Those are number 178 overall and number 217 overall. And then back-to-back picks in the 7th round, number 249 overall and number 250 overall. So 10 picks in this draft for the Chiefs. Not a lot of very high picks, so not a lot of ammo to go up and get to 15 overall or something crazy, but I do think they could find a way to make it work if they wanted to get in that mid-20s range.
What you heard from Kathy Nelson, come out here on Saturday and enjoy this. Also, don't sleep on those 7th-round picks.
No.
Or Isaiah Pacheco or Jalen Watson will slap your hand, right? So we pay attention to the 7th round in the Chiefs' kingdom. We'll close out this way. Here's the blessing of the 31st pick. And on Defending the Kingdom, Matt and I try to kind of give you things to think about. You can take it to your water cooler, to your workplace, and go, hey, let's talk about this. So we'll plant this seed. The 31st pick in this time of Patrick Mahomes and where he ranks on the Chiefs' salary cap, right? We know he's on a second contract. We know the dynamics of that. We've seen that affect other teams. And the Chiefs have already won a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes on that second contract. But the 31st pick, if it becomes a long-term player, even if it's not necessarily a Pro Bowler, you get the 5th year, basically. It provides leverage. So think about the great picks the Chiefs have had over the last 2 years. And let's take let's take Trey Smith. The Chiefs picked him up in the 6th round. He's really a first-round talent, at the very least the 2nd round. But if you pick him at 31 in this draft, or someone like him, you basically get 5 years instead of 4, and really 4 instead of 3 when you look to that free agent year. So it creates leverage for that player that you're looking for, a long-term player that the Chiefs are looking for to live in that second lap around the track of Patrick Mahomes' contract.
That cost control is so important because how do you keep getting back to the Super Bowl every year if you're the Chiefs? Well, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Travis Kelce, you have Chris Jones. That's a big step and a big part of it, but you also have to replenish this roster with good young talent year in and year out. And that's why the Chiefs have been so good in recent years. It's not just the guys at the very top of this roster. It's the guys that you bring in like Jalen Watson, like Isaiah Pacheco, like Trey Smith, that you're finding at the back end of the draft, and they come in, and they're not just good players. They help this team win a championship. You have to keep finding those players each and every year, and kind of joked around that number 31 overall is basically a second-rounder, but in terms of that cost control, it's really not, because you have that 5th-year option, and if you get a really good player at 31 overall, and you can. We've seen that in past drafts. You can get a really good player even in the 30s, you have them for an extra year, when if they were 32 overall in this draft, you'd only have them for 4 years.
All right, so Kingdom Defenders, if you can get here over the next several days, do so. It literally feels like a World's Fair, National Football League style, and if you've never been to Kansas City, you will see just how magical it is. And for those of you who can't get here over the next 3 or 4 days, sometime, maybe in the next 5 years or so, figure it out a way to get here, even if you're not from the States, to get here and see how magical and wonderful this city is. I know you and I are both immensely proud of it. Matt McMullen, senior team reporter. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. It's the NFL Draft 2023. It's here, it's now, it's real in Kansas City.
10, 5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.